Hello, everyone. This is Fahim Jackson, and this is episode 93 of my podcast show, In the Know. This podcast is aimed at trying to guide people through the world with a variety of topics. I am also using this platform to ask questions and try my best to answer these questions with my viewpoints of the world around me. The following episode introduction speech is for the topic of today. And the introduction speech is regarding 7 deadly sins. This time, what is sloth? Have you ever looked around your room and thought to yourself, boy, I'm lazy. This room needs to be clean ASAP. You have papers and clothing everywhere? Now, I know that some people say things like, hey, I'm more organized when everything is laid out for me. But it's nothing more than a lazy way of not having structure. Because structure means you have to do better. And doing whatever you want is the easiest. It's called taking the path of the least resistance. This is something that I have had to learn not to do as an adult. It is tough for one to follow the path of the more resistance, but the tough road is the road that leads to success. What does all this have to do with being sloth? Well, it has a lot to do with sloth, especially since sloth has a reluctance to work. So, in addition to sloth being a sin, is also a complacent way to live. Complacency should be a sin in itself, but it can lead to the same outcomes as what sloth leads to. So, for a more clear understanding of sloth, let's observe the definition of sloth. What is sloth? Sloth's clear definition is someone who is reluctant to work or make an effort. Sloth falls under assortment of ideas stemming from mental, spiritual, pathological, and physical. What do I mean by an assortment? Well, I'm talking about through the assortments. We have to understand that without care is how sloth is classically defined. Let's observe the assortment starting with the mental. A person who is a mental sloth is someone that is distracted easily, someone who is sluggish, bored, or has a weak mindset. A person who is a spiritual sloth is someone who puts off the work necessary to dedicate their lives to God and serve in His purpose for you. Those who fall under the pathological sloth is someone who is too lazy to not practice self-care as to tend to an illness that may be lingering. And the physical aspects of sloth are people who are lazy to practice self-care as it pertains to their fitness or any other personal appearance. These are the people we characterize as the couch potatoes. So as you can see, the term sloth has many different meanings, but they are all associated with laziness or complacency. People look to the road less traveled, the easy way out, yet when does one become successful by taking the easy way out? Success is about being uncomfortable. You should fear comfort and complacency. Laziness is a silent, slow killer. In the moment, you feel nothing, because in the paradigm of existing, you just lose a few hours. But those hours add up eventually. Then you're able to see the full scope of time lost. And your laziness is laid out before you, so you can see what you could have accomplished during that scope of time. Now, besides laziness, complacency, some people are chronic procrastinators. Here's the category I have fallen under plenty of times. I've gotten better over the years, yet it still creeps in from time to time. So, with all that has been said, let me tell you a story. You see, Aaron is a smart and highly educated man. He has the whole world behind him. Only problem is that when it comes to being productive with his life, he tends to be quite lazy. His complacency is unfortunate considering where he could be if he took initiative to make himself better. For example, Aaron started building a computer app, which if built into a business, could take him far. Yet for whatever reason, he seems to start things no matter how good, then give up. As time progressed on, Aaron found himself lagging behind a lot of guys his age. And with this in mind, he decided to do something about the situation. But when you have a history of procrastination, how does one go about trying to turn things around when this is how you function? So, step one, Aaron came up with a comprehensive plan. Then he stuck to this plan. But eventually, he fell back into his normal ways. And eventually, after trying to continue on, he ended up giving in and dumping that idea. Now, back to square one. He is on his same old path. See, we assume that sloth means having an unclean room in a dirty apartment. No, sloth is about not finishing work and not making the effort to progress forward. That's where laziness comes into play. So how does this type of behavior ultimately hurt someone in life? How it affects the person. Whenever someone is not producing to the best of their ability, then they start to become a little disgruntled. But the only problem is that they are in full control of their destiny. Yet when you're so used to being lazy, you get used to this to the point where you are moving in the same manner. Like for instance, I make sure I make my bed every day before I leave the house. Now that I have been doing this for so long, I don't think about it. But we're not talking about making beds, because that is the opposite of the topic at hand. When sloth presents itself, you tend to put things off into the last minute, if not tossing it aside altogether. Have I ever been one of these lazy people? Well, yes. And it has a lot to do with being disciplined. As I got older, I changed my ways. For so many things, so for so many others, they get caught up. And these are people who tend to give up. Effects on our society. Are there any real issues associated with a person who is sloth on the society at large? Well, there are some problems that arise from having this way of life. If you're a physical sloth, that tends to mean you don't practice a lot of self-care. This will have a negative effect on a society later when your health begins to deteriorate and it becomes the problem of others to care for you. Now, if you're a single person, then so what? But this is a major issue across the country. As it becomes more than one person, now the nation has to bear the brunt of all of it. But how do you make people see that they're becoming these sloths? Well, the answer is that you can't make them see it. They have to come to the understanding themselves. Voluntary sin. Sloth is very much a voluntary sin. You have the ability to change this circumstance, but a lot of it has to do with being lazy. Now, it becomes more involuntary once you've developed a pattern of behavior. And once this happens, breaking the cycle is quite difficult. So work on not developing a sloth state of moving through life. And with this end statement, well, we have to understand sloth as a sin. To know sloth is to understand where people get their complacency from. Because if they would just put in the effort necessary to be great, they would be. They would be great mentally, physically, spiritually, and from a pathological standpoint. And why did I mention these 4 elements above? Because this is how we aim to understand the sloth person and what category they fall under. You see, I have and still sometimes find myself in a sloth mood. And what you have to do is work to bring yourself back to the point from which you first started working. Thank you for listening to In the Know. I'll be bringing you another episode regarding religion. The topic will be covering 7 deadly sins. This last one, wrath.